Every single person when I see them walk through that door, I'm like, what could I unleash today? I mean, what magic could we perform where they walk out of there more confident, more ready to use their talents to change the world? And if we do that one by one by one, and we even get it right 1 out of 10 times, we're going to change the course of Peoria.
Mic check, mic check. What's going on? Welcome into another episode of the KZ Community Beat. I'm your host, Ross Martinez. In the hot seat this week, I have the head of the Peoria Riverfront Museum, John Morris. We're going to learn in-depth details of the history of our community. So without further ado, John Morris, let's get to talking.
10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day of the week, except for Monday, we're closed, and Sunday, we're noon to 5 p.m. So 6 days a week, we're open. We have the largest movie screen in Illinois.
I did.
So you
had some great Star Wars.
Oh, yeah. We did all 9 of the classic Star Wars, but we do great nature films. We do great classic films. We have a thing where the community can pick a film, and for $500 they can actually sponsor a film and invite all their friends, and we do a lot of fun stuff. But the museum is accessible to people. You can get a pass at the library to come for free. You can pay $15 an adult to come through, see a planetarium show with the stars on the dome, and see all the galleries and film. So it's a very cool place. Very cool place.
Now, what are your thoughts about the DART program? Have you been keeping up with that?
What program?
Was it DART, where they sent the missile into an asteroid in space, and they hit
Sure, I've been keeping up with it. In fact, our planetarium director shared the video as soon as it came out. She has an email that she sends. Anybody can subscribe for free to her email. She gives you updates at least once a week, sometimes more, on super cool stuff that the planetarium keeps track of. Yeah, it's the first time ever that we saw going right into the asteroid right before it impacted. And,
no Bruce Willis needed.
No Bruce Willis needed. Armageddon, man. Yeah.
Well, John Morris, we talked off the mic a lot about what this podcast entails, and it's pretty much a collection of people's stories, things they've been through, mentors, life lessons, how they've grown with the community, or if they've been outside the community, how they see it from an outside perspective. Are you born and raised here in Peoria?
Native son of Peoria. Very proud of that. Born 1968, June 2nd, just up the street at Methodist Hospital.
And take me through childhood here. Like, how was it?
So I grew up public school, very proud, Peoria Public Schools, Northmore, Richwoods. Northmore then was K through 8. So I walked to school. I was a crossing guard. Got involved with student council. That was very cool. And grade school, high school, Richwoods High School. Had a wonderful career at Richwoods. Still a great school. It's called the greatest school in America. But Peoria Public Schools has a lot to be proud of. My wife, Cindy, runs the Peoria Public Schools Foundation. Both our children are products of the Peoria Public Schools. So, yeah, I'm a native son of Peoria. And then I went off to Washington, D.C., a place called the George Washington University, GW. It's 3 blocks from the White House. So I had a great run at a couple of degrees, undergraduate, and then a Master of Public Administration at GW.
Yeah.
Interned in the White House and Capitol Hill, and fortunate to be president of the student body at GW as well. So
you roamed the halls of Capitol Hill and everything.
I did. Yeah, I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked in the White House, and pretty fun. Pretty fun.
So mentally, how is that for you? Like, we know Peoria, right? Middletown, USA. It's downstate.
Yeah, right, downstate. Chicago calls us downstate. I call them upstate. I mean, no insult to them, but we were here first,
Yeah.
I always say DuSable, I was telling you earlier, the French speaking black Haitian explorer who farmed here for 10 years in central Illinois, actually moved north and founded the city of Chicago, which is why they have a DuSable Museum, a DuSable Street up there. So it's there's a lot of history right here. Peoria is unbelievable. I recently met with the chief of the Peoria tribe, which is now based in Oklahoma. But Peoria takes its name from the Native American peoples who were here for hundreds of years. And sadly, they were moved out of Illinois in 1818. 3 different places where they settled in Oklahoma. There are about 3,800 members of the Peoria tribe left. But our name comes from this place where there were once the native indigenous Americans who were here for estimated 10,000 years. 3 times older than the pyramids of Egypt. There have been people living up and down along this river. So here we are in Peoria today. You know, you're living right downtown. I'm working downtown. We don't realize, but this is one of the most historic places in all of North America. The French came here, and they were trapping fur. Fur was like really valuable back then. Yeah. And so this is late 1600s. There was no United States of America. It hadn't declared independence for another 100 years. And in 1680, the French put a fort in here for the first time. And we're the oldest settled French community in the Midwest. So there's a lot of cool history in Peoria that people don't necessarily know about. But I grew up here. I didn't know about it all. But now that I'm the president of a museum, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
I learn from smart people around me all the time. And this place is cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea prior to. I should have did some history, but you know.
No, I mean, who knew? Who knew? But that's our job at the museum, and it's my job personally, and why I find myself for the last 5.5 years as the director of the museum. It's really cool to be able to lift people up, build confidence in our community, because we've got a super cool place here.
So, what makes you so passionate about the history of this place?
Well, I think we should bloom where we're planted. This is my town. I was born here. And I feel like lifting other people up is a good thing to do. You do it in your program.
Thank you.
And the museum does it every day.
Yeah.
We have 180,000 visitor experiences a year right downtown Peoria. Among those now are fully paid for, fully sponsored by generous donors in the community. 15,000 students in 44 schools in the region. All of the Peoria public schools students come every year, K through 8. Every year they come in. So they're going to see like the 10-foot tall amethyst, purple quartz crystal amethyst tower, one of the 3 tallest amethyst towers in the world. Yeah. They're going to see Abraham Lincoln's life mask, one of only 15 that were made from cast in bronze, actual from Lincoln's face. It's unbelievable. So super cool stuff. Wow. Anyway, yeah, I'm proud of myself.
No, I mean, I'm a nerd about history. So this is amazing to me. Just the fact that you've put yourself in a position to enrich the community in our history. But who did that for you?
Good question. You know, I know my father, who moved here from Virginia. A lot of people from Virginia are interested in history. There's a lot of presidential history. It's an old community, the earliest settlements in America. So he wasn't a historian, or isn't a historian, but he certainly had an interest and passion for history. Somewhere along the line, though, I got the idea, the bug for the notion that if we don't know where we've been, it's hard to know where you're going. Yeah. History informs the present and inspires the future. You gotta know a little bit. It's like being a basketball fan, living in Chicago, where you're from, and having no idea that there was ever a guy named Michael Jordan.
Imagine.
You can't imagine it. You have to know that in order to fully appreciate the history of the present, even though Michael Jordan's not playing in Chicago. So why do you need to know about him? Because how can you live in Chicago and not know about Michael Jordan? That's why they put up a bronze sculpture of him in the Jumpman stance, and that's why everybody still talks about it. So, you know, history helps us really have a sense of where we are today. Because history's over. Let's face it. It's over. It's already done. So why study it? Because it still is present with us. And that's why, how would you live in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where the pivotal battle of the Civil War took place? Battle of Gettysburg. But there's a bunch of people in Gettysburg who actually don't know that a battle took place there. I feel the same way about Peoria. How can you live in Peoria, Illinois, and not know that we're one of the most historic cities in America?
Yeah.
One of the greatest river cities, one of the great, one of the oldest continuously human occupied places in all of North America. I mean, it's pretty cool. People have been coming here for a long time. We should know it.
Yeah.
We should know about our Michael Jordan stories.
So what are our Michael Jordan stories besides how we've been established, how we've been here for years?
Well, I'll tell you a few. So, first of all, we produced very significant leaders in different fields. One of those is in entertainment. Richard Pryor. He grew up within blocks of here. And he had a woman at the Carver Center, which is still around today, still helping young people today. They're a private, not-for-profit organization, United Way agency. A woman named Juliet Whitaker took Richard Pryor aside, helped him get on the stage, kind of got him into acting as a young man, and kind of got him away from a pretty bad situation. Because if you know Richard Pryor's story, it was kind of grew up around a brothel, and his father was very, very tough on him, and it was a bad situation. But I think Juliet Whitaker and others in the community helped him kind of get going. And right now at the Peoria Riverfront Museum, we actually have just found within the last year and a half the first pictures ever taken of Richard Pryor for public relations purposes, and they are owned by the museum now, and they're up on the walls of the museum. He's 21 years old, and he's about to go off to New York, trying to break in. And so you got entertainment stories, you got science stories. So it seems impossible, although not so much because we've just been through a pandemic. But once upon a time, if somebody got sick with a bacterial infection, they could die. I mean, there was no way of bringing it back. And if it was a chance. And during World War II, where we're at war with the Nazis, trying to keep America free as a free country, our troops were dying over there as much from the disease and infection that they would get as they were in battle. Actually, more from disease than they were in battle. This is a problem because when you're trying to win a war against the Nazis in Europe and your troops are dying, so what does that have to do with Peoria? Well, there was, about 20 years earlier, discovered something called penicillin. Yeah. Penicillin's antibiotic, but nobody knew how to mass produce it. So they only could produce a tiny little bit. They would knock down the disease for a day or two, but they didn't have enough penicillin to keep the patient alive. Well, when you got thousands of troops dying of disease, and if they were wounded and they got infected, they were dying, the whole America hung in the balance. Because if we didn't have the manpower to, and then it was people power, today we'd say people power, manpower to do it. So how does Peoria factor? Well, Peoria had a laboratory here that was founded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. It's called the Ag Lab. Today we see it. It's coming out from Bradley University across the interstate. See it right up there in University. It's still there. At that place, that's where they discovered how to mass produce penicillin. It saved millions of lives around the world over the last century. And that was in the 1940s, in the mid-1940s, right amidst the war. So here in Peoria, we have what's called an international chemical landmark. People outside of like the chemical societies wouldn't even know what that is. I didn't know what it was, but it's a very big deal. It's one of the most significant chemical breakthroughs in history, and it happened in our town because of Andrew Moyer and his assistant, who was a woman named Mary. They called her Moldy Mary because she's found out how to mass produce penicillin. So today we get sick, we take antibiotics, we take it for granted. But Peoria changed the balance not only of disease, but possibly of our free society, of the nation. Because if we couldn't stop those troops from dying, it was a pretty big deal. So
this blew my mind.
Yeah, these are incredible stories. So we invented the white cane. You ever seen a blind person with a white cane and a red tip? Mm-hmm. That was invented in Peoria. It's now the worldwide symbol. It was the Lions Club back in the 1930s. Cars were becoming more and more prevalent, and blind people were having serious problems because you're trying to cross the street, and you don't have the horse clopping along. You got a car coming. So the Lions Club here painted a cane. We have the first cane on display at the museum. Really? It's incredible. On loan from the Blind Center here in Peoria. So the stories go on, but we should be pretty proud. You know, that's why I've decided my job, my role, my purpose in life is to help us believe in ourselves. Yeah. Because we should. We're a super cool place.
But what makes you like that passionate about it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I guess
because it's
a little bit of competition. I mean, I'm a competitive guy.
Yeah.
I live here, and we want to win. We want to keep this place growing. We want to have this place succeed. We want to keep it, And we want our children to grow up in a place where they know they can succeed. They can do whatever they want. They can invent a business or move forward. So the stories of the past, when that has happened, we ought to tell those stories.
Which is interesting because I've always said that history goes in circles, which a lot of people say we're very secular with it. We go around and around. So we made medical history with that, right? But then wasn't it over the summer and the fall where we had something just installed at OSF?
That's exactly right. The proton beam therapy at the Comprehensive Cancer Institute of OSF, the dream of Dr. Jim McGee, who himself is a product of small-town Illinois and went to med school and studied radiation. He actually studied radiation in France, where the breakthrough, Madame Curie was her name, had the breakthrough of how to use radiation to actually cure certain diseases like cancer.
Oh, yeah.
So he studied over there at the birthplace of it all. He comes back to Illinois, comes to Peoria, and he is the leader of that whole thing. And we're going to be one of very, very few places in the world that has not only a proton beam therapy device, which I've seen, by the way.
Yeah.
I saw it. It's not open yet, but I got a hard hat tour in there, which is really fun, to be involved with the museum. Sometimes I get into places and on Dr. McGee's dream.
That's history.
Oh man,
that's massive history.
History being made right now.
Yeah.
That's a $250 million facility, mostly funded by private contributions and by the sisters themselves, and it's going to save a lot of lives. So yeah, isn't that great, the way you made the connection between mass production of penicillin and the breakthrough that we're doing today in medicine, in the proton beam therapy. Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. Like before moving out here, I was always told that Peoria is, caterpillar town.
Right.
But the more I'm starting to interview, the more I'm starting to talk to people, get history of this place, it seems like we're more of a medical kind of entertainment field.
I think we're moving. Medicine's largest employer now. We're still the hometown of Caterpillar. Their headquarters has now moved to Texas. Moved up to Deerfield for 5 years and then moved to Texas. But we will always be the hometown of Caterpillar. This is where it grew up. This is where it became a world-class Dow Jones Industrial Average company, and we still have 13,000 employees in the area who are Caterpillar employees, plus thousands of others that are connected. So medical is emerging, but remember, before there was medical, before there was Caterpillar, there was a huge whiskey production. We were the whiskey city in all of the United States.
Like we're the distillery of whiskey?
Right. We had at least 13 distilleries. We were, before there was a federal income tax. Everybody knows now there's federal income tax because you pay federal income tax. But before there was income tax, there was something called an excise tax on certain kinds of products. Well, whiskey was one of them. We made so much whiskey here, we paid more federal tax than any city in America, because excise tax was applied to whiskey. Why do we make whiskey here? Because we're right in the heart of these agriculture byproducts that could easily come to Peoria. We got good shipping with the third highest trafficked river in America behind the Mississippi and the Ohio is the Illinois River. See those barges going up and down? They're carrying millions of tons a year, maybe billions of tons a year of various products up and down that Illinois River. Well, back then, same thing. Great access. And we sit over something called an aquifer. Most of us live in Peoria. We don't even know it's there. What's an aquifer. So 12, 15,000 years ago, a giant glacier was over these parts of this part of Illinois. And the glacier got thicker and thicker each year with the snow and the ice, and never melted. It was a different climate. And the glacier moved down through Illinois at a slow pace, bulldozing up the soil. Well, it stopped right about here in Peoria for a certain period, and then it started melting and retreated. This is over hundreds of years. Where it stopped, it left behind a pile of dirt that had bulldozed up. We call that Grandview Drive. We call that the bluffs of Prospect. We could look across the river. But as it melted, that water soaked down into the ground and well below the soil and into the ground table and formed something that is an underground lake. It's called an aquifer. And right beneath us right now is some of the purest crystal water. You go up to Moss Avenue, right off of Moss there's a little spring where it's still coming up from that aquifer, and it's the purest water you've ever seen. I don't know whether I'd advise it, but I think you probably could drink the water, pure as could be, right out of the spring.
Really?
That aquifer is what allowed the water for the whiskey making. So the corn products and agriculture products coming in, the fact they could load the barrels of whiskey up on the river and go up and down, send them off to wherever their destination was. So this is before Caterpillar was even, nobody had heard of Caterpillar. It hadn't even been invented yet. We were a huge whiskey city. And then something happened. Prohibition.
So we were around before Prohibition.
You better believe it. We were the whiskey city before Prohibition. And then Prohibition comes along and outlaws our economy. I mean, basically, you can't sell alcohol anymore.
Yeah.
Because America had voted for it, and it felt it was a danger to, it was an anti-abuse campaign, the temperance movement that started here in Illinois, up near Chicago. And it resulted in a short-lived constitutional amendment to the U.S. Constitution to ban alcohol called Prohibition. And then there was the repeal of Prohibition. And during that time, though, there was still a lot of alcohol being sold and made illegally.
We don't talk about behind closed doors.
But Peoria has, because we were Whiskey City, we got a lot of that history, too.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, Al Capone and the gangs,
that's what I'm thinking.
They were sending people down here. I mean, this was crazy.
Because when I think Prohibition, I think Al Capone. I think Chicago. I think
you could think Peoria, too, because Peoria this is a hideaway for that group. They would come down here to Peoria. This town became quite a town for all that mess going on during Prohibition. Oh, yeah.
Are there any other stories about Prohibition times that you know of here in Peoria? Anything that kind of would pique the interest of something like the regular historian might not know?
Well, there is a story about a woman who was very much for the prohibition of alcohol and who threatened here in town. She would go around and threaten to destroy like a painting or property or something if you didn't pay her off, and then she used the money to fund her cause, which was the cause of trying to prohibit alcohol. The movement
so
of
she
prohibition.
Extorted the funds to later fund.
Yeah, and so there's a painting here in Peoria that she reportedly I don't know how much of this is fact, but she reportedly threatened to axe this big famous painting if they didn't pay her off, and so the story is that she got paid, and then she would go from city to city doing this. So it was, I mean, it's violent and illegal, and in today's day, you should be arrested if you try to threaten to destroy somebody's property to extort money out of them. But
which were doing illegal actions anyways.
Yeah, right. So I mean, that's where she got,
That was the gray area of it all.
Yeah. So I am not an expert on that particular story, but that's just yet another one of those stories. So as you can see, there's, I think for me, there's an excitement about like discovering these little surprises, and there's many more to be discovered. We have the greatest tree in the state of Illinois here in Peoria. The greatest oak tree in the state of Illinois is up on a place called High Street, and you can go see it right now. It's some estimates 400 years old. It was here before the United States of America. It was here when the French settlers first came. It's so massive. When you see it, it's like you will never forget it. And It survives winter after winter. Unfortunately, 5 or 6 years ago, there was a huge ice storm, and we lost about a third of the tree. And it was that old, but the branches were so huge, and that ice weighed on one of those branches, and it kind of snapped it off, and they had to cut off the rest of it. But it's still impressive. It's still one of the greatest things.
Been around for how long?
Well, some estimates are 400 years. Oh. That's an old tree. Yeah. I mean, it may be one of the oldest trees in the state, if not the oldest. So I'm not sure.
It's lived through a lot of civil transitions.
There's a bronze plaque on there, and it says this tree was witness to this and witness to that and witness to the early. So that tree to me is really cool because you go look at that thing and said, man, the branches of that tree have been witness to a lot. It's right up there on the top of Main Street. Take a left on High Street, zoom back in there. Take 5 minutes. Get out of your car, go look at it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like if people don't know this is here, because you can live in Chicago your whole life, you will never see a tree like this. And Chicago is 3 million people. We're 110,000 in the city, 350,000 in the metro area. So, Chicago's a big city.
Yeah.
You're a Chicago man. So, and Peoria's got a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, you know what I love? I can see the fire in your eyes. Like you ever see somebody doing what they're supposed to do in life? Or you see they're walking in their light is a phrase that I like to use. I can see it when you're talking about this. You get passionate. You're like, well, let me tell you about this. Well, what about this? What about this? That's amazing to see. Like, is that something that also fuels you when you see kids or other community members come into the Riverfront Museum and you see them get that awe moment like, ooh, wait, this is cool?
I like your phrase, walking in their light. I work with a board of directors at the museum who is filled with people like that. They believe in the community. And so they are all volunteers, 21 members. And then there are dozens of other volunteers who serve on advisory councils and hundreds of people who voluntarily give money. And I would say that's what they want, is people walking in their light, like the phrase that you use. Unleash the full talent and genius of every individual. If we do that, Peoria is unstoppable. So if we work together, and what I'm doing is, the museum is just one place. It's one building and so forth, but I don't really think the museum is a building. I think of the museum as a community. It's a community of people like yourself who spend time making podcasts on, helping people walk in their light, tell their story. So what I'm doing is gathering every one of those people I possibly can in something called the museum. Muse means to inspire, and so a museum is a place of inspiration. So what if we did that? What if we used a museum to kind of transform the confidence level of our community, the entrepreneurial spirit? Maybe we could solve some problems, solve some violence, solve some access to having the capital we need to make our dreams get liftoff, because you can have an invention, but if nobody funds it, you're never going to build a factory to make the invention, to sell the invention. So we need access to capital. We need access to good people. When I see somebody like you who's moved to Peoria from Chicago, I'm like, you come to the right place, man. You're here in a place that can lift people up, and we're small enough we could get it done.
Yeah, it's a very interesting town. So I've only been here since April. So April 8th is when I moved. When we're recording this is January 12th. So I'm coming up on my year. But when I went home to Chicago for the Christmas, New Year's, I came back. As I was crossing the bridge, getting back in town, I actually felt like, oh, wait, I'm home. And it hit me quick. Like, all right, this place it's awesome. I like it. But now that I'm learning the history of it, actually living through the history of having that full-time beam come down, like, isn't that awesome, though? Like, cool. Not only do you get to, I guess, rehash history like this, that, but you get to see real-time history being made.
Yeah.
So what are other moments as an outsider that history's been made in the last 20, 30 years here? Stuff that has been happening.
Well, I think what we're seeing right now, and we're witnessing some of these entrepreneurial efforts that could be the future Caterpillars, could be the future, medical centers of the community. There's some entrepreneurial effort. There's some work that's been done in autonomous vehicles that, who knew that Peoria would be a place where some of the leading edge stuff.
Wait, I didn't know
autonomous vehicles, autonomous vehicles that drive themselves, for example. Caterpillar does a lot of work in the autonomous vehicle area because a lot of their big mining trucks don't have drivers. They just drive around. The giant D11 tractors will load the huge mining composite into their beds, and then the trucks will actually drive themselves back to where they need to go. So the future of the automobile probably has something to do with autonomy. Autonomy meaning drive it itself. So you could sit in the car, but the car has got the GPS guide on it, and it takes you to where you're going to go.
Yeah.
Could be your car, but it takes you to where you want. So
Well, we've always been fascinated by self-driving cars. Autonomy, it's been a thing. I remember Demolition Man, the movie.
Sure.
Way back in the
Oh, yeah.
amazing movie. Wesley Snipes. Who else was in it? Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
Wesley Snipes. Demolition Man.
Amazing movie.
Yep,
But they had the self-driving cars.
They had a self-driving car. This notion of technology aiding us, to that extent. So there's been some breakthroughs there. There's a firm here called Natural Fiber Welding. Natural fiber, well, it's interesting because it really is about making fabric out of plants. So they make a leather substitute that Ralph Lauren, some big brands are buying. And these guys are really at the cutting edge.
That's interesting.
I mean, because you use plants to make fabric. I mean, that could change the world. We just passed, in November, 8 billion people on the planet. 8 billion people on planet Earth. There's a lot of consumers. There's a lot of people, not all of them in a place where they can consume equally with some of the developing nations and so forth. Anyway,
8 billion.
8 billion people. Yeah.
That's
a lot of folks. So
and
we're
the fear of like overusing our resources kind of has to be there.
Yeah, but you know what's amazing? The engineering of agriculture products has allowed us to go well beyond what scientists once predicted that we couldn't go beyond 5 billion, 6 billion, 7. There was no way we could feed that many people. There's not enough. Most of the corn we grow in Illinois doesn't even go to food now. It goes to ethanol, goes to making fuel. So we've been able to genetically soup up the productivity of our agriculture. Oh, let me tell you one other thing. It's kind of interesting about Peoria. We are here at the center of the richest soil on earth, the most productive and richest soil anywhere.
What makes it so rich?
Well, what makes it so rich is that Illinois was once covered by prairies, only prairies, and prairie grass each year would die, go into the ground, new prairie grass would come up, die, go into the ground, new prairie grass, die, go into the ground.
So like self-mulch?
Correct. And so it got blacker and blacker and richer with nutrients. And the changing of the season and the way the climate was, it made our soil over thousands of years super black, super rich. I mean, you put a seed in here, it's going to grow more ears of corn, more taller, blah, blah, blah. So you do the same thing out in the red soil somewhere in the south or Northern California's largest agriculture state in the union, by the way, is California, believe it or not. A lot of fruits and vegetables and agriculture in Northern California. But they don't have the soil we have. So Illinois has the soil. And right around Peoria, Bloomington, Champaign, the richest soil in the world. Like, not in the Midwest or not in the United States, on planet Earth, it's the richest soil, which is why agriculture is still the number one industry in the state of Illinois. A lot of people don't think about that.
That is so, like, when you think about it, when you explain it, it's Peoria has had its hand in a lot of mass endeavors, global endeavors.
For a tiny little town.
You would never think, because like I remember when I told my friends, "Oh yeah, I got a job. I moved to Peoria, Illinois," and they're like, "Peoria, Illinois? Like, what? You mean further Naperville?" I was like, "Well, I don't know, man. Let's find out."
Listen, I mean, no disrespect to a lot of other cities because they've got their history, but we got to start knowing that Michael Jordan played for a team here. Oh, by the way.
Wait a minute. Hold on. We're not going to pass by that one. Hold on.
I meant that symbolically, that like I said earlier with Chicago, if you lived in Chicago and you don't know Michael Jordan played there, how could you have missed it?
Okay.
But I also mean it literally because the first professional game Michael Jordan ever played was at the Peoria Civic Center.
Stop.
Not kidding. It was a demo game. He had just been signed by the Bulls, and they used to go out and do these demonstration games to try to get sort of fans out around. And so the first game he ever played in his professional career with the Chicago Bulls was right here. You're in Civic Center Plaza right now.
Yeah.
He's right here. You can look that one up. if you don't believe me.
Because I remember during the documentary they had of the early dynasty of the Bulls, where they were talking about how they would come to Peoria, Illinois, and they would have crazy parties in the hotel room. They would go to, right down the street right here, not throw names out, but they would talk about that. So I already knew that they would come down here for exhibitions. I mean,
nobody knew MJ was going to be the greatest of all time at the time, but they knew he was going to be great. I mean, he had a pretty good career in North Carolina, but that's pretty cool that he started his career here. But we've had other really significant
Tell me
kind
everything.
of.
You know what? Normally, this episode is about an introspective of the individual. Which
Yeah,
we'll probably get
sorry,
to.
I get it.
You
can get into my mind and introspective of me by listening to some of these, because I'm telling you, I'm trying to be the deliverer of really cool stories.
No,
and if I can be, then maybe people can.
I think that this episode is just going to be transformed into the history of Peoria, and I love it because I'm starting to fall in love with the community more and more.
Good.
Every month that goes by, the more I meet people,
we need you. We need more of you.
I need the
moving to Peoria, coming here, making a life here. It's an affordable town. It's got some pretty cool stuff. We don't have everything.
Yeah, no places have everything.
But we've got some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, look around. The museum is one place to find it, but there's a lot of other places as well. Live music scene.
Well, yeah. So we talked about, we have the medical, we have the whiskey, we have the entertainers. But what else? Come on, tell me everything, man. I want to know everything about Peoria.
We also have a very interesting political history in that you had some real leaders come out of Peoria. Now, whether you agree or disagree at the time with them, in their particular area, they did some real big things. Cool. Let me start with the biggest, who wasn't from Peoria, but the most important speech of his career was made in Peoria. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And Lincoln, during the early part of his career, had not necessarily been a full-on radical abolitionist, meaning he didn't believe in slavery, but he wasn't out there fighting it early on. He wasn't with the radicals. But as his career grew, and he served very short time in the United States House of Representatives, but in 1856, he came here to Peoria, and he delivered the speech. They call it the turning point, or the Peoria speech, where for the first time in Lincoln's career, he outlined the reason why slavery was immoral and had to go. And this speech launched him into national stardom from a one-term U.S. House member of the House of Representatives, which is not a lot of experience, to be launched stratospherically into the presidency of the United States, and the president who emancipated slaves and who ended slavery as an institution is Abraham Lincoln. There's no doubt about it. He's a pivotal president, but you got to understand, the guy with a block and a half from where we're standing at the old courthouse, it's not there anymore, Lincoln delivered the Peoria speech, and he came out against slavery. And you can look that speech up, called the Lincoln Peoria speech. Yep. So Lincoln,
that's amazing. First off,
a whole book's been written on it.
What?
An entire book on this one speech. So that's another thing. It's like, well, most people have heard of Abraham Lincoln. And while he has his roots, he was born in Kentucky. He was raised in Indiana. He came to Illinois when he was 21 years old. He lived in Springfield. He was a lawyer. He rode the circuit. He practiced law as far north as Metamora, Illinois. He used to go to that little courthouse when Metamora used to be the county seat. But nothing compares to the importance of Lincoln deciding to give that lengthy speech, and they do have the transcript of the entire speech, saying, and you know what, he equated it to his faith. You know, he references his faith a lot in there, and the notion that slavery is an immoral institution. There's no more compromising. There's no more, we'll admit a new slave state to the Union if we admit a free state. He drew the line. And that's why there's a statue, right, a block away from here of Lincoln drawing the line. That's to commemorate that Peoria speech.
I was, because I always pass it, and then sometimes at night when I pass it, I look over, I think someone's staring at me, and I have to realize, oh, it's Abe.
That's why it's there. That's why it's there.
Like that, this is amazing. Just like learning this much about the community. Like learning that Peoria has these rich roots with the tree. There's a pun on that.
Well played.
Yeah. But I mean,
what do you like about Peoria?
So
You're
far,
new
what
to
I've
town.
been loving the open welcomeness. I've been meeting a lot of people that have open arms and people that are born and raised in Peoria. It's like, come on, I don't feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've been loving. I've also been loving just the riverfront. I love going to hang out there.
Yeah,
it's great for my anxiety. I love just hanging out with my dog and meeting people. I've been slowly getting out to really view the music scene. So, like, I'll go to Jackson Adams, Kenny's. I'll go hang out, kickback, random places I like so far. So, I slowly started becoming more community. And with this podcast, I'm starting to meet a lot more people, which introduced me and asked me to go hang out. So far, the people. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think Peoria, because we are small enough, small town, we've got some big city attributes, but we don't take ourselves so seriously. We take what we do seriously, but we really don't take ourselves so seriously. I think there's an underlying faith, confidence, sense of family, treating your neighbors well. Yeah. We're not perfect, but Peoria is a great, great place. I'm glad you moved here.
Thank you. I will say it's a very interesting community because, not to go too deep into it, but politically, you do have the mixing pot. Sure. It is red-blue.
It is.
It's not one side or the other.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll meet a lot of Trumpers who are very respectful. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I'm not used to this. So, like, the other day I met this cat, proud, make America great again, has it on, everything. But he took a second, shook my hand. How's it going? How you doing? Blah, blah. And it takes away my preconceived notion of, wait a minute, automatically I should not like you. But as an individual, I could talk to you.
Yep.
So I've been seeing that a lot more.
I think there's a humanity here.
Yes.
There is.
It's interesting. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It's a culture shock for me.
Yeah, in Chicago, it's hyper political. You draw the line. You can't be friends with this person or that person.
No,
but that's really politics is very important. We're a free society. We should be fighting, and we should be competing. We should not be fighting. We should be competing. But but if that ever goes away, worry about the United States.
How so?
Because in freedom, you're going to have conflict. You're always going to have conflict and freedom. Yeah. The only way to not have conflict is to fake it by having a dictator that tells you you're all going to believe the same thing. We're different. People are human beings. We're different. And so we're going to look at the world differently. Right now you got in Florida, freedom means one thing in Florida. In California, freedom means another thing.
Well, you're talking about the bluest of the blue and the red of the red.
Right, exactly. And they're both. There was an analysis done of the two governors of either of those states who couldn't be more, sort of polar opposite politically. Yeah. And they both used the word freedom in their inaugural speeches. Something like 22 times. One was 22 and one was 17 times or something. So there's this different worldviews of what freedom is, and but the idea that freedom is important and that we should keep fighting for it, we should celebrate conflict in some ways. People are not our enemies. They may be our political opponents. They may be our competition. We may fight it out with them, but they're not enemies. An enemy is somebody trying to blow up the United States, or an enemy is truly somebody who somebody who's trying to do us in.
There's a divide between us, just as humans, as individuals. There is something that makes a clear point in the sand that, if you're here, you're here, you're here, you're here. There's got to be something to break that. Like, at the end of the day, we all just want to be loved, accepted for who we are, and make sure that what we respect is respected. There's got to be something. Like, in history, has there ever been a time point where...
Only one period of American history there's been a unity, and that was during World War II. That's only one time.
Because we had a common enemy.
Yeah, we had a common enemy. We had a common ally. So liberal America was somewhat allied with sort of the Russian Bolshevik Revolution. The idea of the commoners sort of kicking out the aristocracy, but remember, Russia was lost 20 million people to the Nazis. So the sort of American left, in some ways allied and sympathetic to, there was no way we're going to let that go. The American right, there had been a desire to not be involved, but after Pearl Harbor, that was game on. Everybody was behind the United States of America for that 3.5, 4 year period. Everybody in the United States, everybody was united. Other than that, there probably hasn't been a sustained period, even during wartime, where there hasn't been somebody saying we shouldn't be at that war. Remember when you were growing up? You remember the war in Iraq?
Yeah, that was big.
It was not high school. There wasn't unity on that. There was front page articles every day. Get out of There was an attacks, political attacks on the president, and there were people behind the president that defend us from terrorism. And so, but the older I've gotten, the more I've said, look, it's okay. We don't all listen. We can see the world a little bit differently, but what we don't want to do is lose our faith. If you have a sense of purpose on earth, a sense of higher, calling, a sense of humanity comes out of that. Whatever one's particular faith practice is, and I'm a Christian, and so I believe that the good Lord has created all of us for a purpose, and He wants us to love each other. That's my worldview. I'm not telling everybody they have to agree with me, but that's my worldview, and I think that is a higher call than trying to decide what you believe and whether you're going to vote on this legislation or not. So I think if we lead our lives that way, it'd be a pretty good deal. Now, that doesn't mean that if we're running for office or something, which I have done, I've served in office, I've run for office, and
nice.
It doesn't mean that we're not going to vote differently than the other guy or gal, because we believe differently, but it doesn't mean that we don't love them. We can't show them respect and love.
We need more of that.
Yeah, and I believe we'll get back to it. I think America is filled with good and decent people. It's been a rough ride. You come from a place where it's just so hyper partisan. I work at a place, the Peoria Riverfront Museum, where you can walk in that place, far left, far right, right down the middle, no politics at all, whatever your creed or color, and you can find something that'll lift you up. You can go in the planetarium and see what we know about the solar system, fly to the new James Webb telescope, take you to the farthest reaches of the universe. You got to come down. We have the iPhone 14 Pro of planetariums right now. I mean, it's called the Digistar 7 is the brand, but it's basically the hottest, coolest software and hardware you can have at a planetarium. We have it in Peoria. And talk about a unifying factor. I mean, I don't care what politics anybody is.
Yes.
You look up in that night sky and you see the James Webb images shooting back billions of years in time. You're like,
well, see, this is where now you're going to pique my interest because I'm a space nerd.
Oh, you got to get down there, man. You'll be coming every weekend once you're.
I need to, but the Artemis program that they were running out of NASA, which they kept pushing back because of all the was it tropical storms that were coming through? Then there was an outbreak of something happening, so they kept pushing it back. But the Artemis program, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the one where they're planning on putting a female on the dark side of the moon by like 2026, 2030 or something like that?
That's right.
That's amazing.
The first person of color will go back to the moon. We haven't been there since 1971, 50 years ago.
Since the race to the moon?
Yeah. Or 73, I'm sorry. I think it was a period, 1969 through maybe 72 was the last of this. There's 6 missions where men landed on the moon.
You know, it's funny. There's probably, not funny, but interesting. There's going to be a handful of people that didn't know that because I didn't know we went 6 times. I thought we went 3.
So the Apollo missions, the first time we actually landed somebody on the moon was Apollo 11. So we ended up with 6 missions, and you may know this. 3 men went to the moon at once, and 2 of them went down onto the surface of the moon. The other one stayed up in the orbiter. So they had to sort of man the orbiter. It was still amazing to go to the moon, but the two men went down. The first man to ever step foot on the moon is Neil Armstrong of the state of Ohio, Purdue graduate. He went to Purdue University in Indiana, and they're very proud of that. We just borrowed some of the things that they own at Purdue from Neil Armstrong and put them on display at the museum.
Oh, I definitely have to
Incredible.
see this.
And we've got a statue of Neil Armstrong in the museum lobby.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you're a space nerd, get to the museum. It's the place to be. Renee Kerrigan is our curator of science and planetarium director. Is superb.
I might have to hit her up for a conversation.
Oh, she's the one you want to talk to.
Because you know what? Like this, why do you think we are intrigued by space?
Well, because it's mind-blowing. We're it. We are it. We are on a tiny blue planet.
Yeah.
Now, maybe there's something else out there, but we don't know about it.
I believe there's something. There has
to
be.
Right. But in time freaks you out. We're seeing light now 13 billion years old. The light left the star 13 billion years ago. So we don't even know what is out there now. If that's true, 13 billion years ago, there could be nothing out there now. We're seeing something that's 13 billion years old, or there could be much more beyond that.
Or did you hear the conspiracy? And I love this conspiracy because it makes my mind go, but that we're in a black hole. Have you heard that?
All bets are off. We have no idea. We have no idea. But I think that there is there's a reason. There's a reason that we are.
Okay, don't worry about it.
There's a reason that we're so intrigued.
But do you find that we're more intrigued by space than we are underwater?
We're more intrigued by space than underwater, but we know less about underwater probably than we do about space.
We fear underwater more than we do. I think we fear the deep blue more than we fear the space.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But why? Like I see, that's the conversation I want to have with somebody. Why do we fear the deep blue more than deep dark?
Don't know. We just did an exhibition called Creatures of Light, Nature's Bioluminescence.
I did the commercial for it.
Oh, you did?
That was what I was saying.
Excellent. Well, anyway, I appreciate you letting me spew out all these Peoria trivia facts and so forth. But to me, they're points of pride, and there's something in it for everybody in there. I mean,
they're points of beauty because it shows throughout years, centuries, Roger. Because how far back did you say the oldest bit of info that you had for me?
Well, Peoria was first settled by the French in 1680, but the indigenous Americans here go back 10,000 years.
That's amazing. That just shows longevity of history, culture, of the trials, tribulations, things we've gone through. I mean, prohibition itself, the fact that we were doing whiskey, all this very intensely, and then here comes the government and say, never mind. So now we got to we got to
retool.
We
got to adapt. Yeah.
But that's all amazing. Yeah. So history, you're just a history buff.
Well, I've never studied history formally. I'm an enthusiast of history. I'm also an enthusiast of art. We didn't talk much about art, but the museum is a museum of art, science, history, and achievement. Those four pillars. We've got a lot of great art. Preston Jackson's Bronzeville to Harlem, An American Story. I was telling you about earlier off air, where it's hundreds of little painted bronze figures of real life characters out of the Great Migration, the so-called Black Renaissance period that grew out of that. We've got some of the most valuable paintings and sculpture we've ever had on loan from Art Bridges, which is Alice Walton's foundation. Alice Walton is a great philanthropist, the daughter of Sam Walton, who founded Walmart. She has sent a bunch of stuff to Peoria. It's absolutely incredible. Some of the greatest paintings we've ever had down at the museum right now.
Do we have big-name Peorian artists, painters, sculptors?
So
kind of like on a level like Richard Pryor?
Right. Our biggest name artists were the performing artists, and Richard Pryor is number one on that list, but you also had when radio was the medium, you had a couple called Fibber, McGee, and Molly, and they were hugely important on the radio circuit. You had other entertainers like musicians. The most famous guitarist to come from Peoria is named Gary Richrath, He was the lead guitarist for REO Speedwagon.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was born in Peoria, raised in East Peoria, went to East Peoria High School. We're actually working with his widow now on the potential of an exhibition of his private collection of guitars that he used to perform. So
that'd be amazing.
We are presently holding those for the family and working on an exhibition for the future. So, you know, there's fame is a weird thing, because at one time you could be super famous and then the next generation may not remember or know who you are. But there have been some famous people. But the people I like to celebrate the most are just the people who've worked hard and raised their families and worked for Caterpillar, worked in the medical field, or been a salesman or a school teacher or
everyday person,
minister, or, served, worked at a social service agency, or, every day. They're the heroes of this town that have built the town over the years. Most of them, their names won't be on a school or a street sign or a museum.
Names I've heard. So I got the chance to talk with Becky Rossum, amazing lady in the community who passed me your information.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Becky.
Hetty Elliott, another amazing individual.
What a great human being.
Marcellus Somerville. So I feel like
love Marcellus.
What I'm doing here is, or what I hope that I'm doing is, I'm collecting audible books from each individual, the human library that we talked about before. And I love hearing perspectives. I love hearing people's passions. People speak about the light that they're currently walking, like you with the passion, like, that invigorates me, where I'm like, okay, I'm doing something good. And
you are doing something good, man.
Thanks, man. Come on now. Don't worry. I'm going to visit the museum.
Well, that you can do that too, but whether you visit or not, you're doing something good right here at this microphone. So
thank you, man. Before I let you go, let me ask you this. What do you hope people get out of visiting the Riverfront Museum?
Our goal is to unleash the full talent and genius of every individual. So you walk through that door, we want something to happen to you when you're in there that unlocks a part of you that you didn't know you had to give. Because everybody's filled with talents, a lot of them. Yeah. So we use the tools of art, science, history, achievement, the stories we tell, and those stories are what we hope will somehow inspire you. You stand in front of a 10-foot tall purple quartz crystal amethyst, one of the tallest in the world, and your mind is just, it's like looking into the stars. And something is going to happen by one of these fifth graders or senior citizens or a young guy who moved here from Chicago like yourself. Something's going to happen at one of the places in that museum, which is going to help you to be more. That's what I'm hoping. Every single person I'm at, when I see them walk through that door, I'm like, what could I unleash today? I mean, what magic could we perform where they walk out of there more confident, more ready to use their talents to change the world? And if we do that one by one by one, and we even get it right 1 out of 10 times, we're going to change the course of Peoria.
I love it. You're going to collect history, change history. Isn't that beautiful?
I like it.
Come on.
You're hired. You're the slogan man for us. I like that.
I can be put on retainer if you need.
Good.
All right, this has been another episode of the KZ1023's Community Beat. I'm your host, Ross Martinez. John Morse,
Thank you, Ross.
of the Peoria Riverfront Museum. For more information, where can they go?
They go to our website, PeoriaRiverfrontMuseum.org. Just come on down to the museum. We'll help you out.
Just come on down. I don't know when the episode is being posted because I'm recording ahead of time. But is there anything big in the summer that you like to promote?
Well, we got Body Worlds coming. It's the biggest science exhibition in the history of traveling science exhibition. It's real human bodies. They've been plasticized. Some people will be grossed out by it, but a lot of people will be like, whoa. Because they take the whole muscular system, the whole neurological system, the human brain, the human heart, and we're pairing it with an exhibition called Heart. So Body Worlds and Heart coming this summer, 2023, is going to be big. And then next summer, Sharks.
Sharks?
Sharks. The biggest exhibition on sharks in the history of museums is coming to us directly from New York City's American Museum of Natural History. The night at the museum is a big deal.
Are we going to talk about the Megalodon?
We have a Megalodon model in the exhibition, and people are going to be blown
I'm a nerd about this.
You're going to like it.
Oh, all right. Make sure you go down to the Peoria Riverfront Museum. If you're out of town, make a trip. We got a lot of great things happening. Again, John, thank you so much. Go back, check out all the episodes. More to come. Thank you so much. All right. Bye.